Cow in common language is a domestic animal. It is the most common domestic and farm animal of the world. Cows are commonly reared for meat products, milk and dairy products, as well as skin for making leather goods. Cow dung is a beneficial product which is used for making dung cakes used as fuel. Cattle are large domesticated cloven herbivores. They are a prominent modern member of the subfamily Bovinae and the most widespread species of the genus. Mature female cattle are referred to as cows and mature male cattle are referred to as bulls. Young female cattle, heifers, young male cattle, bullocks, and castrated male cattle, steers, are also referred to as cows. Cattle are commonly raised as livestock for meat, beef or veal, beef cattle for milk, dairy cattle, and for hides, which are used to make leather. They are used as riding animals and draft animals. Oxen and bullocks, which pull carts, plows, and other implements. Another product of cattle is their dung, which can be used to create manure or fuel. In some regions, such as parts of India, cattle have significant religious significance. Cattle, mostly small breeds such as the miniature zebu, are also kept as pet. Different types of cattle are common to different geographical areas. मवेशियों की मुख्तलिफ अक़साम मुख्तलिफ जोग्राफियाई इलाकों में आम हैं. टॉरिन मवेशी बुनियादी तौर पर यूरोप और एशिया, अमेरिका और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के मुतदिल इलाकों में पाए जाते हैं. ज़ेबस, जिसे इंडेस्टाइन कैटल भी कहा जाता है, बुनियादी तौर पर हिंदुस्तान, एशिया, अमेरिका और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के इलाकों में पाया जाता है. सांगा मवेशी जो है बुनियादी तौर पर सब सहारा अफ्रीका में पाए जाते हैं. ये सब अक़साम ऐसी हैं जिन्हें बाज़ औक़ात अलग अलग यानी झेली नस्लों के तौर पर भी दर्जाबंदी की जाती है. मज़ीद 1000 से ज़्यादा तस्लीम शुदा नस्लें जो हैं वो दुनिया में मौजूद हैं. यानी कौ की जो टोटल नस्लें हैं वो 1000 से भी ज़्यादा हैं. Around 10,500 years ago, cattle were domesticated from as few as 80 wild. So, in central Anatolia and western Iran, a separate domesticating event occurred in the Indian subcontinent, which gave rise to zebu. This area is now called Pakistan. India and Pakistan, they have large number of cows there. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, there are approximately 1.5 billion cattle in the world as of the study of 2018. Cattle are the main source of greenhouse gas emission from livestock and are responsible for around 10% of global greenhouse gas emission. In 2009, cattle became one of the first livestock animal to have a fully mapped जीनोम. मवेशियों को यानी जो कौ है इसको असल में 3 अलग अलग अनवा के तौर पर शनाख्त की गई है. बोस्टोरस, यूरोपी या टॉरिन मवेशी, जिनमें अफ्रीका और एशिया से मिलती जुलती अक़साम भी शामिल हैं. और ज़ेबू और टॉरिन दोनों मवेशियों के आबाई नस्लें हैं. बाद में इन्हें एक नौ के तौर पर दोबारा दर्जाबंदी किया गया. बोस्टोरस, जिसमें ओरच, ज़ेबू और टॉराइन मवेशियों को झेली नस्लों के तौर पर शामिल किया गया. ताहम ये दर्जाबंदी मुतनाज़ा है और कुछ ज़राए अलग अलग प्रजातियों की दर्जाबंदी को तरजीह देते हैं, जैसे कि अमेरिकन सोसाइटी ऑफ ममालोजिस्ट का ममाल डाइवर्सिटी डेटाबेस. So, if we will talk about the lifespan of a cow, while the natural lifespan of a cow is 15 to 20 years, the dairy industry rarely allows cows to live past age 5. They are sent to slaughter soon after their production level drop. So if we will talk about their lifespan, their lifespan is actually 15 to 20 years only. So if we will talk about the anatomy of characteristics, cattle are large, ungutable mammals with cloven hooves. Most breeds have horns which can be as large as the Texas Longhorn or small like a squirrel. So careful genetic selection has allowed polled, hornless cattle to become widespread. If we will talk about the digestive system, यानी इनके निज़ाम नज़ाम की अगर बात करें गाय के बारे में, तो cows are ruminants, meaning their digestive system is highly specialized to allow the consumption of difficult to digest plants as foods. Cattle have one stomach with 4 compartments: the rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum, with the rumen being the largest compartment. The reticulum, the smallest compartment, is known as the honeycomb. The omasum's main function is to absorb water and nutrients from the digestive feed. The omasum is known as the many plies. The abomasum is like the human stomach. This is why it is known as the true stomach. Cattle are known for regurgitating and rechewing their food, known as cud chewing. Like most ruminants, while the animal is feeding, the food is swallowed without being chewed and goes into the rumen for storage until the animal can find a quiet place to continue the digestion process. The food is, a mouthful at a time, back up to the mouth, where the food, now called the cud, is chewed by the molars. So as these microbes reproduce in the rumen, other generations die and their cells continue on through the digestive tract. These cells are then partially digested in the small intestines, allowing cattle to gain a high quality protein source. These features allow cattle to thrive on grasses and other tough vegetation. So if we will talk about the vision is the dominant sense in cattle, and they obtain almost 50% of their information visually. Cattle are a prey animal and to assist predator detection. यानी गाय में बड़ी ताकत होती है, देख के वो खतरे को भांप लेती है, शिकारी को जान लेती है, यानी कोई अगर उसको नुकसान देना चाहता है तो उसको वो भांप लेती है. Their eyes are located on sides of their head rather than the front. This gives them a wide field of view of 330-degree, but limits binocular vision and therefore stereoposes to 30-degree to 50-degree compared to 140-degree in humans. This means they have a blind spot directly behind them. Cattle have good visual acuity, but compared to humans, their visual accommodation is poor. Cattle have 2 kinds of color receptors in the cone cells of their retinas. This means that cattle are dichromatic, as are most other non-primate land mammals. There are 2 to 3 rods per cone in the fovea centrals, but 5 to 6 near the optic papilla. Cattle can distinguish long woven color, yellow, orange, red, much better than the shorter blue, gray, and green. Cows are able to discriminate between long and short or medium, green. So, but have limited ability to discriminate between the short and medium. They also approach handlers more quickly under red light. Whilst having good color sensitivity, it is not as good as human or sheep. A common misconception about cow cattle is particularly bulls is that they are enraged by the color red. Something provocative is often said to be like a red flag to a bull. This is a myth. In bullfighting, it is the movement of the red flag or cap that irritates the bull and incites it to charge. So if we will talk about their taste, cattle have a well-developed sense of taste and can distinguish the four primary tastes: sweet, salty, bitter and sour. यानी गाय के अंदर टेस्ट डेवलप हो जाता है और गाय को पता चल जाता है कि ये चीज़ मीठी है, ये नमकीन है, ये खट्टी है या ये तुरश है. स्वीट, साल्टी, बिटर एंड सोर गाय को भी पता चल जाता है. There possess around 20,000 taste buds. The strength of taste perception depends on the individual's current food requirements. They avoid bitter tasting foods, potentially toxic, and have a marked preference of sweet, high chlorophyll value and salty foods. Their sensitivity to sour tasting foods helps them to maintain optimal ruminal. Plants have low level of sodium and cattle have developed the capacity of seeking salt by taste and smell. If cattle become depleted of sodium salts, they show increased locomotion directed to searching for these. To assist in their search, the olfactory and gustatory receptors able to detect minute amount of sodium salt increase their sensitivity. As biochemical disruption develops with sodium salt depletion. So अगर गाय के सुनने की रेंज की बात करें तो 23 Hz से 35 kHz तक है. The Hz is the unit of frequency in the international system of units. And यानी 23 से 35 तक है. Cattle hearing range from 23 to 35 kHz. Their frequency of best sensitivity is 8 kHz and they have a lowest threshold of 21 dB, which means their hearing is more acute than horses. So इनका जो touch system है यानी cattle have tactile sensation detected mainly by mechanoreceptors, nociceptors in the skin and muscles. These are used most frequently when cattle explore their environment. जैसे ही मौसम चेंज होता है तो इनको सेंसेस से पता चल जाता है कि अभी सर्दी हो रही है, गर्मी हो रही है, जो भी मौसम होता है. तो there is conflicting evidence for magnetoreception in cattle. One study reported that resting and grazing cattle tend to align their body axis in the geomagnetic north-south. So if we will talk about the behavior of the cow, the cattle, under natural condition, calves stay with their mother until weaning at 8 to 11 months. Heifer and bull calves are equally attached to their mothers in the first few months of life. यानी जो बछड़े होते हैं इनके काऊ के वो 8 से 11 महीने तक जो है वो माँ के करीब रहते हैं और यानी mothers in first few months of life. Cattle are considered to be hider type animal, utilizing secluded areas more in hours before calving and continue to use it more for after calving. In one study, beef calves reared on the range were observed to suckle an average of 5 times every 24 hours with an average total time of 46 minutes spent suckling. There was a diurnal rhythm in suckling activity with peaks between 5 to 7, 10 to 1 and 5 to 9. So if we will talk about the one study showed that over 4-year period dominance Their leadership and dominance relationships within a herd of semi-wild highland cattle were very firm. There were few over-aggressive conflicts, and the majority of disputes were settled by agnostic, non-aggressive, competitive behaviors that involve no physical contact between opponents, threatening and spontaneous withdrawing. Such agnostic behavior reduces the risk of injury. Dominant status depended on age and sex, with older animals generally being dominant to young ones and males dominant to females. Young bulls gained superior dominance status over adult cows when they reached about तकरीबन 2 साल की एज तक जब वो पहुंचते हैं, about 2 years of age. As with any animal dominance hierarchies, dominance associated aggressiveness does not correlate with rank position but is closely related to rank distance between individuals. So if we will talk about their grazing behavior, when grazing cattle vary several aspects of their bite, tongue and jaw improvements and then the movements. Depending on characteristic of the plant they are eating, bite area decreases with the density of the plants but increases with their height. Bite area is determined by the sweep of the tongue. In one study observing 750 kilogram, 1650 pound yani, steers, bite area reached a maximum approximately 170 centimeters square. So bite depth increases with the height of the plants. By adjusting their behavior, cattle obtain heavier bites in sward that are tall and sparse compared with short, dense swards of equal mass, equal area. So, cattle adjust other aspects of their grazing behavior in relation to the available food. So, if we will talk about, it's simple to calculate the first cow year is equal to 14 human years. Each subsequent cow year equals 4 human years. So, the productive lifespan of average cow is between 2.5 to 4 years. In most developed dairy industries, cows calve for the first time and 2 years of age, which brings their total lifespan from birth to death between 4.5 to 6 years. The natural life expectancy of dairy cattle is approximately 20 years. However, a cow can return to estrus within a few weeks after calving and can breed to become pregnant again quickly. Theoretically, a cow could give birth more than one during a year if she rebreeds quickly. Good management practices when raising cattle recommend waiting to rebreed cattle until their calves are older. So if we will talk about the sleep, the average sleep time of a domestic cow is about 4 hours a day. Cattle do have a stay apparatus, but do not sleep standing up. They lie down to sleep deeply. In spite of the urban legend, cows cannot be tipped over by people pushing on them. If we will talk about their genetics, a team of researchers led by National Institute of Health and US Department of Agriculture reported that the scientists found cattle have about 22,000 genes and 80% of their genes are shared with humans, and they share about 1,000 genes with dogs and rodents but are not found in humans. Using this bovine HAP map, researchers can track the difference between the breeds and affect the quality of meat and milk yields. So, About the domesticating, cattle occupy a unique role in human history, having been domesticated since at least the early Neolithic age. Zoological and genetic data indicate that cattle were first domesticated from wild aurochs. So 10,500 years ago, there were two major areas of domestication, one in the Near East, Central Anatolia, and the other was Iran. So, feral cattle are defined as being cattle that are not domesticated or cultivated. Population of feral cattle are known to come from and exist in Australia, United States of America, Colombia, Argentina, Spain, France, and many islands, including New Geneva and dominant Republic of Haiti, and in sometimes regarded as a feral breed. So can be found on the Aleutian Island, the Kinmen cattle, which are dominantly found on Kinmen Island. Taiwan is mostly domesticated, while smaller portion of the population is believed to live in the wild due to accidental releases. Other notable examples include cattle in the vicinity of Hong Kong. So किसी भी मुल्क की मईशत में, इकोनॉमी में लाइव स्टॉक का बड़ा हाथ होता है, यानी इकोनॉमी इससे जो है बड़ा फ़र्क पड़ता है. जिन कंट्रीज़ में लाइव स्टॉक होता है, जो मुल्क लाइव स्टॉक को फ़रोग देते हैं, यानी जानवरों को, कैटल्स को फ़रोग देते हैं, उसका उस मुल्क पे, उसकी मईशत पे बहुत अच्छा असर पड़ता है. यानी जिन मुल्कों में ज़्यादा लाइव स्टॉक होता है तो उनमें बहुत ज़्यादा असर पड़ता है. उनकी एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ मीट बढ़ती है, उनकी जो पॉपुलेशन है उसको न्यूट्रिशन सारी मिलती है, दूध, गोश्त, हर चीज़ मिलती है. So if we will talk about that, the meat of adult cattle is known as beef and that of cows is veal. Other animal parts are also used as food products including blood, liver, kidney, heart and oxtail. Cattle also produce milk, and dairy cattle are specially bred to produce the large quantities of milk processed and sold for human consumption. Cattle today are the basis of multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide. The international trade in beef for 2000 was over $30 billion and represented only 23% of world beef production. Approximately 300 million cattle, including dairy cattle, are slaughtered each year of food. The production of milk, which is also made into cheese, butter, yogurt, and other dairy products, is comparable in economic size to beef production and provides an important part of the food supply for many of the world's people. Cattle hides used for leather to make shoes, coaches, and clothing are another widespread product. Cattle remains broadly used as draft animal in many developing countries such as India, Pakistan. Cattle are also used in some sporting games, Spain, Italy, including rodeo and bullfighting. So if we will talk about the meat production, the study of 2011 tells that in Argentina, cattle meat production was very high than Australia, Brazil, China, Germany, Japan, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. These countries have a very good production of meat. Certain breeds of cattle such as the Holstein are used to produce milk, which can be processed into dairy products such as milk, cheese, or yogurt. Dairy cattle are usually kept on specialized dairy farms designed for milk production. Most cows are milked twice per day with milk processed at a dairy. कुछ ऐसी कौएं जो बल्कि ज़्यादा ही ऐसी होती हैं जो सुबह शाम जिनको ना दूध निकाला जाता है और उनके उस दूध से फिर बहुत सारी प्रोडक्ट्स बनती हैं, दही बनता है, मक्खन बनता है, लस्सी बनती है, बहुत सारी चीज़ें यानी इससे बनती हैं. So if we will talk about the lactation is indeed in heifers and spayed cows by a combination of physical and psychological stimulation, by drugs or by a combination of those methods. Or for mother cows to continue producing milk, they give birth to one calf per year. If the calf is male, it generally is slaughtered at a young age to produce wool. They will continue to produce milk until 3 weeks before birth. Over the last 50 years, dairy farming has become more intensive to increase the yield of milk produced by each cow. The Holstein is the breed of dairy cow most common in the UK, Europe, and the United States. It has been bred selectively to produce the highest yields of milk of any cow, around 22 liters per day in average in the UK. यानी इंग्लैंड में ऐसी भी गाय है, ऐसी भी गायों की किस्म है जो रोज 22 लीटर दूध देती हैं. Most cattle are not kept slowly for hides, which are usually, a byproduct of beef production. Hides are most commonly used for leather, which can be made into a variety of products, including shoes. In 2012, India was the world's largest producer of the cattle hides. तो इंडिया ने बहुत ज़्यादा जो है वो एक्सपोर्ट्स किए हैं इसका चमड़े का, इसका गोश्त का, गाय का, तो बहुत ज़्यादा इन्होंने किए हैं. सो इफ वी विल टॉक अबाउट एनवायरमेंटल इम्पैक्ट इन कैटल इंक्लूड methogens that produce methane as a byproduct of enteric fermentation, which cattle bulk out. The same volume of atmosphere methane has a 72 higher over 20 years global warming potential that atmospheric carbon dioxide. Methane belching from cattle can be reduced with genetic selection, immunization against the many methogens. A 2013 report from the Food and Agriculture Organization based on 2005 data states that the livestock sector is responsible for 14.5% of greenhouse gas emission, 65% of which is due to cattle. The IPCC estimates that cattle and other livestock IPCC mean Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. IPCC. The IPCC estimates that cattle and other livestock emit about 80 to 93 megatons of methane per year. So, accounting an estimated 37% of anthropogenic methane emission. An additional methane is produced by anaerobic fermentation of manure in manure lagoons and other manure storage structures, So if we will talk about their health, the veterinary discipline dealing with cattle and cattle disease is called biotrics. Veterinarians are professionals working on cattle health issues are pooled in the World Association of Biotrics, founded in 1960. National Association and affiliates also exist. So, cattle disease were in the center of the attention in the 1980s and 1990s when the bovine, BSE, also known as mad cow disease, was of concern. Cattle might catch and develop various other diseases like block leg, blue tongue, foot rot. In most states, as cattle health is not only a veterinarian issue but also a public health issue. Public health and food safety standards are farming regulation directly affect the daily work of farmers who keep cattle. However, said rules change frequently and are often debated. For instance, in the UK, it was proposed in 2011 that milk from tuberculosis-infected cattle should be allowed to enter the food chain. International food safety regulation might affect a country trade policy as well. For example, the United States has just reviewed its beef imports rules according to the mad cow standards, while Mexico forbids the entry of cattle who are older than 30 months. So, if we will talk about livestock industry, livestock industry, animal welfare and animal rights group. So, the stress and negative health impact induced by high stocking density, such as in concentrated animal feeding operations or feedlots. A feedlot or feed yard is a type of animal feeding operation which is used in intensive animal farming, notably beef cattle, but also swine, horses, sheep, turkeys, chickens, or ducks prior to slaughter. Large beef feedlots are called concentrated animal feeding operations, CAFO, in the United States. So during transport may be detrimental to their welfare and has also been criticized. The treatment of dairy cows faces additional criticism to produce milk from dairy cattle. Dairy cattle are actually cattle breed for the ability to produce large quantities of milk. So, if we will talk about leather, while leather is often a byproduct of slaughter in some countries such as India and Bangladesh, cows are raised primarily for their leather. Cow से जो है वो leather यानी कौ ज़बह करने के बाद इसका जो चमड़ा निकलता है वो ओरिजिनल लेदर जो होता है वो बांग्लादेश, इंडिया, पाकिस्तान और इन कंट्रीज़ में जूते बनाने के काम आता है या एक्सपोर्ट करने के काम आता है. Their leather industries often make their cows walk long distances across border to be killed in neighboring provinces and countries where cattle slaughter is illegal. Some cows die along the long journey and sometimes exhausted are abused to keep them moving. These practices have faced backlash from various animal rights groups. So we will talk about sports. Animal treatment in rodeo is targeted most often at bull riding, but also calf roping and steer roping, bullfighting they have used. And also, if we will talk about the religious, traditional, folklore, Islamic, the cow is mentioned often in the Quran. The second and longest surah of the Quran is named Al-Baqarah, meaning the cow. Out of 286 verses of the surah, 7 mention cows. Al-Baqarah. कुरान पाक में भी गाय का जिक्र आया है. कुरान पाक की सबसे लंबी सूरत बकरा, जिसका मतलब दी काउ ही है, उसमें 286 आयतें उस सूरत में हैं, जिसमें से 7 आयतों में ये जिक्र आया है अल-बकरा में, जो 67 से 73 तक. The name of the surah derives from the passage in which Musa orders his people to sacrifice a cow in order to resurrect a man murdered by an unknown person. हज़रत मूसा अलैहिस्सलाम के ज़माने से. और अगर हिंदू ट्रेडिशन में देखा जाए और उसके अलावा मुसलमान जो है वो कुर्बानी करते हैं. ईद उल अजहा पर कुर्बानी की जाती है. लाखों करोड़ों जानवर ज़बह किए जाते हैं, जिसमें कौ भी होती है, बुल भी होते हैं, और इसमें इसकी कुर्बानी की जाती है और इसके गोश्त को मज़े मज़े से खाया जाता है. एंड देन इफ वी विल टॉक अबाउट हिंदू ट्रेडिशंस, veneration of the cow has become a symbol of the identity of Hindus as a community, especially since the end of the 19th century. Slaughter of cows, including ox, bulls and calves, is forbidden by law in several states of the Indian Union. McDonald's outlets in India do not serve any beef burgers. In Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire of the early 19th century, the killing of a cow was punishable by death. So in other tradition, if we see that in Judaism, as described in Numbers 19.2, the ashes of a sacrifice unblemished red heifer that has never been yoked can be used for ritual purification of people who came into contact with a corpse. The ox is one of the 12-year cycle of animal which appears in the Chinese zodiac. The Chinese zodiac is a traditional classification scheme based on the Chinese calendar that assign an animal and its reputed attributes to each year in a repeating 12-year cycle related to Chinese calendar. So, if we will talk, on 18 February 1930, Elam Farm Oli became the first cow to fly in an airplane and also the first cow to be milked in an airplane. 18 फरवरी 1930 को पहली दफ़ा एक कौ थी जिसका नाम इलम ओली था, उसको पहली दफ़ा जहाज़ में सफ़र कराया गया और जहाज़ में ही एरोप्लेन में उसका मिल्क निकाला गया, उसकी मिल्किंग की गई. The first known law requiring branding in North America was enacted on 5 February 1644 by Connecticut. It said that all cattle and pigs have had to registered brand of earmarked. So, the case of Sherwood Walker involving a supposedly barren heifer that was actually pregnant first enunciated the concept of mutual mistake as a means of destroying and meeting the minds in contact law.